So, what actually caused the Great Recession? It all started with the American housing market. For years, home prices just kept climbing and climbing. Everyone believed that value would only go up. Banks were eager to give out mortgage loans. They offered these to almost anyone who applied. These were called subprime mortgages, by the way. Interest rates were incredibly low at first. That made those big monthly payments seem possible. But here's where everything changed. Those low introductory rates were only temporary. After a few years, the rates reset much higher. Monthly mortgage payments suddenly doubled for many folks. People simply couldn't afford the new payments. So they started defaulting on their loans. Foreclosure signs began popping up everywhere. Have you ever seen a neighborhood decline like that? This created a huge problem for the banks. You see, they hadn't just kept those mortgages. They'd bundled thousands of them together into packages. Those bundles were called mortgage-backed securities. They sold these securities to investors worldwide. Pension funds and foreign banks bought them eagerly. Everyone thought they were super safe investments. The ratings agencies labeled them as top tier. But honestly, nobody looked too closely inside. The bundles were filled with those risky subprime loans. When homeowners defaulted, the securities began failing. Their value just plummeted overnight, This is the part nobody expects. Major financial firms were holding billions in these. Suddenly, their balance sheets were full of trash. They faced catastrophic losses, no question about it. Trust between big banks evaporated completely. They stopped lending money to each other. Think about that for a moment. The entire global credit system just froze up. This was the real heart of the crisis. It wasn't just about houses anymore. The investment bank Lehman Brothers was especially exposed. They couldn't find a buyer or a bailout. So they filed for bankruptcy in September 2008. That event triggered absolute panic worldwide. The stock market began its terrifying crash. Here's where everything changed for everyone. Retirement accounts lost half their value. Businesses couldn't get loans for payroll, so they started laying people off in droves. Unemployment skyrocketed almost overnight, it felt like. The Great Recession had officially begun. So why did this crisis change the world so much? First, it shattered public trust in institutions. People lost faith in banks, governments, and experts. The social contract felt completely broken. It sparked global movements like Occupy Wall Street. "We are the 99%" became a powerful slogan. Inequality was now front-page news for years. Governments were forced to take unprecedented action. The U.S. launched the Troubled Asset Relief Program. They basically bailed out the big banks. This decision was incredibly controversial, honestly. Main Street was furious at Wall Street. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve took radical steps. They dropped interest rates to 0%. Then they started quantitative easing, or QE. This meant creating new money to buy assets. It was a truly experimental policy at the time. The goal was to keep credit flowing somehow. Here's the thing, though. It saved the system. But it also had massive long-term consequences. All that new money inflated asset prices everywhere. It made the rich much, much richer. Have you noticed how housing got crazy again? Stocks roared back while wages stayed flat. The recovery was painfully slow for regular people. Millions never really got their old jobs back. The gig economy began to fill that void. Entire industries were reshaped or just vanished. It accelerated the decline of traditional retail. You won't like this next part. A whole generation's trajectory was altered. Millennials delayed homes, marriage, and even kids. Student debt became a crushing, inescapable burden. Why do you think that happened? The job market was brutal for graduates. It deepened the political divide dramatically. Populism surged on both the left and right. Look at how it rewired global politics. The Eurozone faced its own sovereign debt crisis. Countries like Greece faced severe austerity measures. This sparked massive social unrest over there. The European Union itself was deeply shaken. It changed China's role in the world, too. Their massive stimulus built roads and cities at an insane pace. Global power began shifting eastward and fast. The crisis also rewrote the rules of finance. Dodd-Frank was a huge new U.S. law. It aimed to prevent too-big-to-fail banks, but critics said it also stifled smaller banks. The regulatory landscape became a lot more complex. It also changed how we think about money itself. Trust in the traditional system was deeply damaged. This created a perfect environment for Bitcoin. Cryptocurrency was born from that crisis of trust. The blockchain offered a decentralized alternative. Central banks got scared, They started researching digital currencies themselves. The very idea of money was up for debate. But the biggest change was cultural, honestly. Frugality became cool again for a while. People started saving more and spending less. The sharing economy exploded because of necessity. Companies like Uber and Airbnb took off. Work became more precarious for millions. The social safety net was stretched incredibly thin. This is the part nobody expects. It changed how we view home ownership, too. Renting became the new normal for young adults. The American dream felt permanently out of reach. Why do you think that feeling persists? Politically, it fueled anger on all sides. The Tea Party movement rose on the right. Bernie Sanders' rise happened on the left. The center couldn't hold, as they say. This polarization led directly to Trump and Brexit. Globalization went into sudden reverse. Tariffs and trade wars became common again. Look at how alliances started shifting. The crisis also exposed deep fraud. The Madoff Ponzi scheme collapsed right then. It was the largest fraud in Wall Street history. That shattered any remaining trust, honestly. Very few executives ever faced real jail time. That sense of injustice still fuels anger today. Here's where everything changed for economics. The old models had clearly failed. Mainstream economics faced a huge credibility crisis. New ideas, like modern monetary theory, gained traction. People questioned the very nature of capitalism. Think about that for a moment. It also accelerated the tech boom, strangely. Cheap money flowed into Silicon Valley startups. That's how we got the age of unicorns. But it also increased tech's economic power massively. The FAAing companies became the new giants. So, what did we learn from all this? We learned the financial system is incredibly fragile, and that optimism can be a dangerous thing. We learned that globalization has sharp downsides, and that politics is driven by economic pain. So, did we actually fix the root causes? Banks are bigger now than they were before. Corporate debt has reached even higher levels. And housing prices are crazy again in many cities. You won't like this next part. The tools used to fight the last crisis are now normal. Interest rates were near zero for a whole decade. That left central banks with less room to maneuver. Then the pandemic hit, and they did even more quantitative easing. The system's leverage is still absolutely enormous. Have you noticed how fast bubbles seem to form now? But the world did build some safeguards. Banks now have to hold more capital in reserve. Stress tests are a regular thing for them. Derivatives trading is a bit more transparent today, but the shadow banking system is still huge, and non-bank lenders now play a massive role. Look, the psychological scars are the deepest change. A generation is permanently more risk-averse. They prioritize security over opportunity, often. Here's the thing about that 2008 crisis. It proved that finance is global and connected. A problem in Arizona can sink a German bank. It redefined what too big to fail really means. Governments will now always bail out the system. That's a dangerous moral hazard, you know? It made us question the experts and the elites. Why do you think conspiracy theories thrive now? The crisis created a vacuum of authority. It accelerated the decline of local news, too. That made it harder for communities to understand finance. Ultimately, it changed the pace of history itself. The post-Cold War era of optimism ended right then. We entered a new age of anxiety and cynicism. It made us aware of systemic risk everywhere. From climate to supply chains, we see fragility now. The 2008 crisis was a massive warning shot. We got a preview of total system failure. That memory shaped our response to the next crisis. It made governments spend more freely during the pandemic. So, did it change the world forever? Absolutely, and in almost every way imaginable. Our politics, our economics, our culture, all transformed. It made us richer in data, but poorer in trust. We gained surveillance, but lost community resilience. Think about that for a moment. The Great Recession never really ended for some. It just evolved into a permanent, quiet crisis. That's the true legacy of 2008, honestly. It showed us how fragile our modern world really is.